So what have you been up to?
Well, spring has sprung, so to speak. So my teaching season is on. So I've been outdoors a lot, either teaching or prepping and reconning for courses that haven't yet happened. So essentially outside a whole bunch.
When you say reconning or recon, does that mean you're researching areas for things you want to teach on for this next season? Is that because we know that people go out for different reasons, assuming everything is just a nice hike. So what is the purpose of your recon?
Recon can be kind of what you said. In other words, I'm going to go out in the woods and find a new place to teach people, right? Fresh. So I'm going to go and recon an area, see what it has that might support a particular course. That's one aspect. What I'm doing now is going to places I've already been and seeing how Mother Nature has been treating herself over the past year. Because I can't go and assume that cow tank that had water last year is going to have water this year, especially with the poor winter that we had this year. Okay. So reconnaissance is taking responsibility and going back into nature and seeing what she's offering now, because nature's never static. She's always in flux. Right. You know, all native peoples knew that. And we used to know that too as a people when we were a little bit closer to the land and less insulated by gear and stuff, which allows us to think everything's cool, right? Because the power's working just fine. So I've been doing a lot of the recon about, hey, I got a course coming up and I want to go see how nature was over the last autumn and winter.
So you can do this from anywhere. And part of our quarterly guide that we put out in the summer one is really about great places and destinations because it's summer, it's spring. That's why people move here, right? Why do you live here in Central Arizona? Because I know there's a lot of great places to live and be outdoors.
I live in Central Arizona because Arizona is an amazing state for nature. I love nature. We have 12 different biotic life zones, 3 geographical provinces, and all 4 North American deserts. I can do a desert survival course, get in the car, and an hour and a half later, do a mountain survival course. An hour and a half later. We have more biodiversity. We have more cool nature in our state in the closest drive time of any place in North America. That's how much Arizona rocks. And that's why you need to be responsible when you go out on a day hike or whatever, because when you go to the desert as opposed to go to the mountains, the rules are different, right? Nature has different rules. Wow, this one's really hot. This one ain't so hot. It's a lot cooler because we're at elevation. So with our biodiversity, with our huge spread of natural places to go and play that are so beautiful, as a survival instructor comes an inherent responsibility for you and your family to just do it with some preparation in mind.
Right. I know you don't want to call out a real specific spot, but do you have, of all these different biodiverse regions, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, I love nature, and I know I'll answer the question. I don't mean that to be a cop-out. I love the desert. I also love water. Right. Where there's water, there's more flora, the plant kingdom, which means there's potentially more animals. But we have the Sonoran, the Chihuahuan, the Mojave, and the Great Basin Desert, which all have their own assortment of plants, which all have different animals that come and go, and there's a lack of precipitation. That's why it's a desert. Mm-hmm. So my standard answer would be, I like water, right? Because all the pretty green plants, and I like fish and whatever, and I do. But I also love the deserts. Because of what they offer. And then you ask me, why are you here in Arizona? And Arizona rocks. Arizona has some amazing nature. We're the only state in the union that has all 4 North American deserts, as an example. Now, the Sonoran goes way down into Mexico with 8 different life zones on its own, but we have a piece of it. We have a piece of the Great Basin Desert coming down from Utah. We have a piece of the Mojave coming from California and the Chihuahuan coming from Texas and New Mexico. I mean, Arizona's been blessed with like a little bit of everything in a really short drive time. So I adore it.
Yeah, we do stories every now and then on day tripping. Literally within 60 minutes, you could be on a different planet, right? Whether you're in the forest or the desert, the red rocks of Sedona, right here up off of Mingus and the pinyon pine. Where are you finding people are getting in the most trouble when they're going out?
Mm.
How do we help them, like, be in just this short segment? What are just some fundamentals that just to remind people? Because it's easy. Oh, my backyard's just like this. I always go for that hour hike because where I live, it's like that. Where it's just like out on Mingus. I can see how people get complacent or get lulled into, I'll be okay.
Yeah, that's a real big killer, is the "it won't happen to me" thing.
Right.
Denial's not just a river in Egypt, right? Denial is
Is
huge.
that a survivalist joke? Huh?
It is, yeah. So,
Denial.
but if you look at the stats, and I do, because that's part of my job, that it isn't going to happen to us is way high on the list statistically. And what I mean by that is when someone's compromised in the woods or wherever, and they make it out where they can talk, in other words, they're alive, there's people, don't ask me who they are, that go and research that and write that down for SAR, search and rescue, or whatever.
Right.
Why did you get stuck in the backcountry? We didn't think it would happen to us. That's a huge one. You answered, you asked a massive question, right? That's a huge question. And I'll keep it Tri-City area wise. One, the simple day hike's a great way to come home dead. And the reason the simple day hike sets up a lot of people for failure is what I just said. It's just a couple hour hike. Leave the coat in the car. How could we possibly need that? I'm a glass half full guy. I'm trying to keep you alive. I'm dealing with death. And if I talk to you about what really could go on, it would be scary to people. And that's not where I'm coming from. There's a lot of people that teach survival skills out of fear, and they push that to sell product, and it pisses me off.
Right.
Because, I'm trying to keep people alive, right? This is a glass half full thing. A survival instructor that tries to teach through fear, I'm trying to mitigate fear. Now, notice I didn't say stop it, because that's impossible. If someone tells you, take my course, you'll never be scared again, they're lying to your face.
Right.
What I'm trying to have the client or the student or the person that's compromised out there be able to manage that rush of adrenaline that comes when someone's facing their own potential demise. Or when you look at your kids, because you have them on your day hike and you're out of water and they have that look like, dad and mom is, their God at that time, right? That's their world. There's a lot of stuff. There's a psychology to survival, a physiology to survival, and the physics of heat loss and gain to survival. It's very heady, very scientific, and yet very artful in that it has a lot of variables in it. And I know I just said a huge mouthful there, but what I would say to the viewers and listeners is, one, just have some basic preparedness. Okay, what does that mean, Cody? Get to the point. Well, the two biggest ways to come home dead in Arizona and other places are lack of thermoregulation, which is a fancy word for two words that start with the letter H. Can you guess what they are when I said lack of thermoregulation? I'm putting you on the spot here. Almost. It exacerbates both of the other two.
Right.
Now, one happens in the mountains typically, and one happens in the desert. You know the words I'm talking about? I'm giving Guy a hard time here.
You tell me.
One's hypothermia.
Uh-huh.
Okay, a drop in core body temperature. Hypo means low, thermia means heat, from the Greek origin. That's more mountain survival. And the other is a desert survival thing, hyperthermia. Hyper means high, thermia means heat. So how do I mitigate and deal with those? Well, the easiest way is clothing, which regulates core body temperature as a gross motor movement. When you say start a fire, okay, yeah, you start a fire in a snowstorm.
Right.
You're assuming they have a skill set and matches and whatever. And the other, you hit it, is water. Yeah. This sacred thing right here, I don't know why we go to the bathroom in it. Think about that. This is life itself in Arizona, is this water, especially in our lower deserts. So if I dress properly and I know my water's there, or I pack my water, or I stash my water, or all three, and I leave a 5W game plan with two people I trust back in Prescott Valley, which they will call a thing called search and rescue.
Yep.
If I don't come home Sunday at 6, these are basic, non-scary, common sense things that every family should do, every day hiker should do, because it's not always okay out in the backcountry, right? Things go sideways. There's this guy called Murphy. I don't know if you heard of Murphy's
Law, yeah.
Murphy's Law. So dress properly, have some water with you, snacks, whatever. Leave a game plan with people that love you, where if you don't come back, they can deal with search and rescue, let people know where you're going and when you'll be back at a minimal. And that would bring a lot of people back alive.
That's actually a really good one. I probably wouldn't have thought of that as just letting a few people know exactly where you're going to be, or if you have self-service, share with them, here's where I'm at. We're going to be hanging out for a while.
You do that before. Don't
exactly.
think you're doing the cell phone out in the wilderness, that thing.
Exactly.
Yavapai County is over 8,300 square miles.
It's a big place.
It's bigger than the state of Connecticut. We have caves, we have mountains, we have canyons, we have
mountain lions.
We have a lot of different terrain out there, in a lot of places from experience. This is my 35th year in business. Your cell phone, it ain't going to work, period.
Did you see the story on that young boy out in the Seligman area that supposedly was found by the dog? We have a Great Pyrenees, so it caught our attention.
Right. Yeah.
We have 5 of them. What do you think of that story? What do you think happened?
One, I'm glad the little kid's alive.
Of course. Yeah.
Right. Who's not? 2, when I look at stories like that in the media, there's always missing parts, and there's always things that don't make sense. That boy was 2, wasn't he? 2 years old?
Yeah, he was tiny.
Yeah, there's no way that a 2-year-old is going to walk 7 miles backcountry in the middle of the night.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Okay, I care because I do this professionally. And the reason that troubled me in the media, 1, I'm not buying it. And 2, I mean, who cares, right? The kid's
Safe.
alive,
That's
but as a professional, well, Tommy, well, Jim, I read that little boy hiked 7 miles at night by him. That should not be giving people a false sense of security about what their kid may or may not be able to do. That's what upsets me the most about that, is I think it's wrong information. It doesn't make any sense. And why it matters is people shouldn't set a benchmark on something that probably didn't happen. Now, maybe it is 7 miles on farm roads.
Maybe.
And the kid went over the hill a half a mile.
You know that terrain? I know that terrain.
Yeah.
That's a long way to go for anybody in that terrain.
Right. And at night.
And
then when the rancher found him, did you walk all the way? No, I was asleep under a tree. Now, I care about the semantics and the details because the devil's in the details, always. Yeah. That's what brings people down. And that's why I have a hard time with those stories when the information I think is inaccurate or whatever. It sets up a false premise of dishonesty that can hurt other people in the future. Because guess what? That story's archived forever.
Yeah.
It'll be out there forever.
I think people have grabbed onto the good news, the boy's safe. We love that outcome. I think people grabbed onto, we all want that dog, the old Lee Eller type of story. Those dogs are wonderful. The cuteness of it all is what they grab onto, as opposed to, I'm looking at the size of that young man, that young boy. I'm looking at the terrain. I know how dark it is at night. I know what's out there because we have all those animals on our property, every single one of them. 7 miles in that terrain. I'm glad. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's a 1 in a billion. It was odd that it happened. Maybe that's true, but I just don't know. I'm just happy it's good news.
Me too.
I said to my team, how come we're not publishing about the good news on that? But I'm with you on, there's a lot to it. There's
a lot to it. I'm a survival instructor. This is my passion. This is what I do. I nitpick about stuff like this because it's my job to share that information to keep people safe and happy as much as possible in the woods. And I'm so glad. That story could have been so sideways. We've had colder weather. It was supposed to snow on Sunday here. Now that's backed out to potential rain, but that could have been a game changer. And that's why, as beautiful as our state is, go prepared.
Yep.
Don't assume that makes an ass out of you and me, that everything's going to be cool out there. Take basic responsibility. Like, both of my grandparents were homesteaders, especially one side in South Dakota. And so I grew up around grandmas with root cellars and canned goods and chopping the heads off chickens and growing big gardens. So as a young boy, I was instilled with like, wow, they're really doing more with less. And that's all, I've always been a real fan of that, because what that does, that self-reliance, is it builds confidence, not cockiness. It builds confidence because you still realize that nature is the boss. But I'm very grateful that I was around grandparents that went through that depression era and knew how lucky they were and how grateful they were to have what they had, and to impart that. They didn't know that little Cody was going to be a survival instructor,
Right.
and it didn't matter. This was their lifestyle, was a self-reliant lifestyle. And I really, I'm glad that I got a chance to witness that firsthand.
I imagine that because of our topography, geography, up here in the Quad Cities, we're basically at 5,000 feet. I still talk to people, it's usually friends out of town. Oh, I heard you're living in Prescott. Is it hot? And I know they're thinking that we're Phoenix, that we're in the desert. I'm guessing that mindset, just lack of knowledge. They're not dumb. They don't know. We're in the mountains. And one thing I learned from aviation training is, mountain weather and how quickly it changes. And you and I both have, I know I have a weather app. I know these guys do. I'm always looking at my weather app just by, is it going to be a nice day today? And it'll say 70 degrees, sunny. The other day was a perfect example, and it rained. And it cooled down. It got in the 50s driving home. By the time I got home at night, I think it was 45 where I live. I'm assuming you see a lot of that getting people into trouble up here.
Sure. And as you know, mountains make their own weather. So the other thing that gets people in trouble up here is just the tourist that comes from Phoenix, right? They're not used to the mountains and terrain changes and temperature extremes and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, again, it's knowing your area. Like when we first broke into this conversation, we were talking about the amazing biodiversity of Arizona. And with that, the responsibility of the recreationist to understand, I'm now in the Sonoran Desert. I'm not at 8,000 feet in Ponderosa Pine. You need to understand where you are in life. You need to understand your environment. If you're in a bad part of Phoenix, if you're on Van Buren Street at midnight, you might want to leave, right? You need to understand the environments you're at for your basic safety and enjoyment.
So what's the next course that Cody Lundin is going to be putting on, and why and where? And
the next course I have is the Desert Drifter, and that's coming up in a little bit less than 2 weeks. And it's a course that is the most challenging course that I offer at my Aboriginal Living Skills School. And I ask myself that question every year because it's a course that makes me nervous because there's so many variables in nature, uncontrolled variables. And then you have people, which are uncontrolled variables as well.
No doubt.
Right. And then when you put the variables of people under stress into nature, that's a lot of the cause of what can cause a wilderness survival situation. Yeah. So why I do it is, I love nature. We talked about that, but what I've noticed over several decades of doing this, it doesn't matter if a person ever makes a bow drill fire out of cottonwood and seep willow again. The nature changes people, and nature changes people usually for the better. And some of the real rough experiences create the most change. I'll give you an example. This course several years ago, this guy who is a Special Forces medic, out of service, Special Forces medic. Okay, 3 words that should bring pause. You can imagine what this guy's seen, right? Took the Desert Drifter course, the one we're talking about, several years ago. We came back. It's a butt-kicking 7-day course. And he didn't say much, and he left when I graduated the students, because if you make it through the course, you graduate. And I was like, I hope he liked it, because I knew he was a Special Forces guy. And then a few weeks later, I got a handwritten letter from him, handwritten, not typed. And he said, Cody, I'm sorry I left so early. I had some things happen in the field that really opened me up. I came back to my wife, and I I took all the booze and I dumped it down the toilet and the drains. And I'd promised my wife that I'd do better. And then I'm going to try to beat this addiction. That when you have a course that can cause a special forces soldier to go back home and throw all their booze away and apologize to their wife and try to get a new start on life, I don't see any higher calling.
I think you did something right there, right?
It's
Awesome.
nature that did something right. I'm just the sidekick.
Awesome.
So that's what I'm saying is when you can put people through an experience that changes their life to the point of a years-long addiction and trying again and giving them the faith and the hope to push through
right.
one more time, I'm in heaven.
Yeah.
Because that just, I don't know how you can get much better than that other than literally saving someone's life, which in this case it might have.
Right. Right where my mind went with that was the value of the outdoors, maybe, I'm guessing, is because we're starting to circle back to this, right? We were all locked down and people started going out more. Our kids and so many people are in their offices or on their phones and they're not outside. And we're seeing a return to that to a great extent, I think. Based on what you just shared, do you think part of that is just the power and the healthy aspects, besides, I think, some challenges that were built in there that created some epiphanies, the value of outdoors? Just, I'm guessing that if you want to go back to the indigenous people, they knew something, or we lost all that knowledge maybe. Maybe they were tapped into, there's something about the outdoors that always leads us back to going outside or going camping or going hiking. For me, it's just a pull, like I got to get outside. I'm just an outdoors person. And I'm not probably articulating it well, but is that evidence to you that the outdoors has some great healing effects?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no question. We all came from the outdoors.
Yeah.
We used to spend 90% of our time outdoors and 10% indoors. Now that's flipped in modern society, quote unquote. My grandparents, just my grandparents, I'm not like an old dude, right? My grandparents on the farm with the cows, with the chickens, with the gardens, they spent much more time outdoors than a modern family would now. And that's just a couple of generations ago. There's no question that without nature, things go sideways. Nature to me, and again, I'm downloading 34 years of experience. This is my 35th year of teaching at my school about what I've seen from clients. I know it's great for me. Nature helped me heal my life,
right?
But I've seen it. And I just introduced you to a story. There's no question that even if you just went out in the park, Fane Park or a park in Prescott Valley, even if you just have flowers on your back porch, if you can't go out and you bring some houseplants in, you're going to feel better.
Yeah.
Nature rocks.
Right. And that's why, circling back, why we're all here in Arizona, why you're here. You obviously have tons of content to deliver just from the biodiversity. Where can people go to learn more about your upcoming classes? I definitely want to share that.
Sure. My website is codylundin.com.
That's easy.
Yeah. And we just did season 2 of The Survival Show. That's thesurvivalshow.com. They're both interlinked websites. So if you can't go outdoors, you can watch a DVD or stream about some survival skills. And if you can go outdoors, you can potentially take a course.
I think we'll have to do that. Maybe we'll learn something else we didn't expect along the way, right? Because of outdoors.
Exactly.
Will you come in again? I know you're busy, but I'm hoping we can get you in on a more regular basis because you always have something to share, and maybe another story when you get through a season or you get through a class, maybe post-class story would be awesome if you have the time to do that.
Yeah, I'd like to come back. I appreciate you having me.
I appreciate it, Cody. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.